sent to them, they did not seem to know about this issue, or weren't aware that their policy fell short on that issue, I should say.
Your office made 4 recommendations to the DOJ to address the concerns cited in your memo. 1, what were those for the record? And 2, to your knowledge, what steps has the DOJ taken to implement those recommendations?
So the 4 recommendations were: 1, to make sure there was this one-year appeal process; 2, to notify employees of their right to this process, because obviously you can have a process, but you shouldn't have to have an employee rummage through a lot of policies to find it. 3rd, when there is a suspension, look to see if there are positions they can go into, where they can continue to maintain their position while performing work, even without the suspension, if that's the plan. And then 4th, put in place a review to make sure that these are being done timely. And so, because you don't want a situation either where if they can find another job with the security clearance suspension pulled, that they somehow indefinitely stay in that other job. You want them to have that resolved. If they shouldn't be in the job, they should leave, right? Then if it was an unfair suspension, they should be put back to their old job.
And have they taken those recommendations?
They have, and I think very importantly is the requirement that they report regularly to department leadership as to why that hasn't occurred in a timely way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman of California's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and for the witnesses, thank you for your testimony. I want to take this in a slightly different direction. Most of the focus has been on the Department of Justice, as is appropriate. But most of this is history. My concern is tomorrow. My concern is what might be in our future. Project 2025 is a roadmap that the Republican administration may use should Trump win the election. And in Project 2025, there are many things to be concerned about, most of which happen to do with the weaponization of the government, the whole of government, to carry out an agenda. I want to focus on one part of Project 2025, which really hasn't been discussed much, but really should be paid attention to. And that is the redesign of our national security apparatus, putting all senior military officers and career intelligence officers through a loyalty test. And what that might mean for our nation should that come to pass. We can debate whether it would come to pass or not. The election will have something to do with that, but also the willingness or the unwillingness of the new administration to undertake that. What would a loyalty test mean for the military? Wouldn't be their ability to conduct the necessary programs for our national defense, but rather their loyalty to the president and the president's agenda, which may or may not have anything to do with national security. We have some history here that might be useful. For example, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would not carry out President Trump's political agenda. Certainly willing to carry out the military national security agenda, but not the military agenda. And that earned Chief of Staff General Mark Milley the opportunity for the president to call for his execution. Now, if Project 2025 is the roadmap for the Trump administration, and the Trump administration demands a loyalty test for our senior military generals, colonels, and career intelligence officers, what does that mean for the nation? Posse comitatus is often used. but I believe this committee has from time to time taken a look at the emergency powers of the president, which basically can waive nearly every law. So we may wind up, given Project 2025 and the loyalty tests that seem to be embedded in it, with a military that is capable of involvement in domestic affairs and an intelligence community that's supposed to be looking outside of this nation, involved domestically. So the combination of the current very long list of emergency powers that the president has, together with a loyal military hierarchy and a loyal career intelligence community that is loyal to the president, not necessarily loyal to the Constitution or to the history of our democracy. What could it mean to our nation? A military that is used domestically for political purposes, an intelligence community that is looking inward. Project 2025 presents a very serious challenge. 5 seconds. I'd like all of you to ponder what this would mean. Is it a problem? Mr. Kirschner.
It is, and what I'm reminded of, Representative, is after I graduated law school and I was sent to Army Law School, the JAG school on the campus of the University of Virginia, one thing that was drilled into our heads is you must obey lawful orders, but equally important, I would say more important, you must disobey unlawful orders. Project 2025 would wipe out that second command, which is more important than the first command, and the danger can't be overstated.
I appreciate the forbearance of the chair for that 25 seconds.
Gentleman's time. The gentleman yields back, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. It's disappointing that we need this hearing. Mr. Allen, I want to apologize for what's happened to you. Our country should treat you better.
Thank you for the apology.
Thank you for your long career of service to our country, and I just wanted to ask, your experience spans a couple decades. So over your time in service to our country, just confined to the FBI, what kind of changes? I think the perception back home is the rank and file people at the FBI are people that we want to be there, that we want to support, and frankly, there's not a lot of trust in the current leadership system. And when you ask questions, a lot of my constituents had the exact same questions, and others did. So thank you for taking the courage to just ask an honest question. And the way that was treated is shameful. And we're here today in part because of that. And frankly, Mr. Horowitz is continuing a 3-4 year long, hopefully imminent, report that answers the exact same question. So how have you seen the FBI change as someone who moved up through the ranks?
I would say that, unfortunately, in my experience, with the culture at the FBI, it's very easy for leaders there to kind of impose their wills on their subordinates. It's a culture where there are a lot of careerists and blue flamers who'll do what they need to climb up the charts and the ladders. And that includes burning other agents or subordinate employees to get to where they want to get in the organization, whether that's for power or money concerns. That's something I've observed in the culture of the FBI since I started there in 2008 as a contractor, worked for a couple of years, and I got on officially
That was
to the Charlotte
Plankton.
field office in late 2015. So I'd like to say that this is from my personal experience, a sea change, but from what I've seen, there have always been vain careerists within the organization who destroy people in order to climb the charts.
So safe to say we're not always promoting the best and brightest.
I would concur with that statement.
How do we need to change the culture to get it back on track?
I think there needs to be more accountability, and there needs to be a high focus on moral and ethical behavior within the organization. And I think outside checks and balances via policy change, where the Bureau isn't allowed to simply just review their own conduct, to truly have an external watchdog force that can actually cause punitive change and enact measures in the organization. I think that's a big part of it. Um, that's what I would advocate for. But I know a lot of the folks that join the FBI, they get into it, and it's not quite what they expected once they get on the inside. So there's a lot of cultural change just from the historical culture of the place that has to change. And I'd like to tell you that I'm shocked that this is where the FBI has come today. But frankly, I'm not shocked at all that this kind of lawless conduct could have occurred within the walls of the organization.
Yeah, sad, but I've heard it from many other people, and frankly, you felt the blunt end of it. And again, hopefully, we can make this right swiftly, and you serve out a good career there. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Mr. Horowitz, in another way, you've done things that my constituents appreciate. You've provided oversight and accountability, and the oversight and accountability function of Congress seems to work. The public finds out about all kinds of things, but they're just so frustrated because at the end of the day, Congress just shuts up and cuts the check. We don't provide reform. We don't provide accountability. Instead, you see people like Mr. Veltri promoted, somewhat validating Mr. Allen's observations, and trusted, as it turns out, with critical investigations. I mean, we saw the FBI. I hope there's an investigation underway on the events in Butler, Pennsylvania, on July 13th. Is there an active Inspector General overview of that?
I actually don't have jurisdiction over that. My understanding is the DHS Inspector General.
Inspector General Kufari does. And as SIGI, the Integrity Committee, you formally directed that. They've tried to target people, even as Inspector Generals. Did you feel sometimes limited or coerced because of how SIGI has changed their behavior over the years?
Yeah, let me just say, I was the chair of SIGI, not the chair of the Integrity Committee, and by law, that distinction, Congress has separated those two, but the Integrity is part of SIGI. Look, I've dealt with issues at the Integrity Committee. I think there are improvements that certainly need and can be made, both internally and through legislative action, that would improve the process. But I do think, and I've worked with folks there, that they have tried to exercise their responsibilities as the chair of the as members of the Integrity Committee as best they could.
Well, one thing we absolutely have to do is we have to change the way it's funded. Right now, they're harvesting cash from other agencies, including extra money. And so Congress needs to take action, in particular with funding. My time has expired, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'll pick up maybe a little bit where my colleague just left off, and the question was about Butler, Pennsylvania. I'm curious to know if any of you are aware as to whether or not the FBI is involved at all in determining what's going on in Springfield, Ohio, because as far as I'm concerned, there is domestic terrorism afoot, and it is at the word of the Republican nominee and his running mate. So do we know if anyone is checking into that on the federal level? I'm just curious. Just a yes or no, anybody?
I don't know.
Okay, perfect. Either way, I want to move on, and I want to talk about Mr. Kirshner. I'm just curious, if you were to define what weaponization of the federal government looks like, just in a quick, short definition, what would it be?
Using the Department of Justice to reward your friends and your criminal associates by delivering pardons after they've been convicted by juries, or before their case was even concluded, or before their case was even charged, and conversely, using the Department of Justice to punish your perceived enemies, order investigations and prosecutions, even if they're not warranted by evidence. I'm sorry, that was not brief.
That's okay. It was accurate. Because that's how I see weaponization as well, and it's something that we saw a lot out of Trump specifically, because all of his friends were going to prison, and he's probably got more friends that are headed to prison soon, and if we are lucky, he will find him a cellmate soon as well. But nevertheless, interjection. I want to go to something that's pretty interesting, but I'm going to start with Mr. Allen. I wasn't on this committee the first time you were here, so this is the first time we're interacting. But I am caught up to speed, and I have a simple question for you, yes or no. Do you believe that career employees like yourself should have your job taken away even if you've done your job well and followed agency rules? Do you think it's right to be fired just because you have political disagreements with those above you?
No, it's not right to persecute anyone for their political or religious